Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, House Intelligence Committee makes a deal. Bill Barr does not have to be arrested and held in the congressional dungeon, for now, anyways. Newly revealed IRS memo shows that Steve Mnuchin lied about Trump's taxes. And the all-out assault on immigrants spans multiple departments of our government and uses children as a club. Meanwhile, the EPA's incredible assault on our health continues unabated. Nevada ditches the Electoral College, getting somewhat closer to the National Popular Vote Initiative. Mitch McConnell attacks blue slips once more as the Trumpization of our federal judiciary marches on. And speaking of marching, Austria's far right has an oopsie. That's always good for the world. And abortion rights protests held across the country as states begin to shore up their protections for women's sovereignty over their own body. All this and more on today's program. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Oh, this is sort of cute. Matt, can you put this up on the board here? This just came across my transom, as it were. I just IM'd you. This is really fun. Y'all recall that Harriet Tubman was going to be placed on a $20 bill. It was supposed to coincide with the 100th year anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote. And looks like that's been punted to 2028. Just because, according to Steve Mnuchin, we couldn't get the drawings done. Pretty stunning. That supposedly it is a function of some I don't know, trouble.
110th anniversary is fun too.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll have Trump on the other side when it comes out.
This was, the Tubman design was announced in 2016, which I followed like a year-long process. Maybe it was about a year of people pushing this. Now, I don't think it was going to completely, it's Jackson, right, on the 20 now. I don't think it's completely going to get rid of Jackson. I think it was going to be along with Jackson, although why not? Why not have a...
Did they take any pictures together? Maybe we could just put a picture of both of them.
Oh, that would have been very sweet. But it's nice. You have somebody who was sort of, known for known for a lot of things, but really his genocide skills, right? And then someone who was working for the rights of people who were denied rights in this country. So it's a nice supposed to like balance out. And I guess we're just gonna have to wait another 8 years because it's so hard to find a good graphic design person. Apparently,
it's a lot of reason why a lot of people that work for me didn't get paid. You gotta wait for the right
Is
job.
Is there any doubt that if it was the opposite, if Tubman somehow was already on our $20 bills and they were like, we really we really need to put Jackson on our bills, that they wouldn't have gotten this done under the Trump administration?
What are you implying?
You know what I'm implying. Mnuchin says he's focused on security features, not on imagery. Here is Representative Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts, from my old hometown of Somerville, and she is questioning Steve Mnuchin on this decision. You understand, it's U.S. government. They had no idea this was coming down the pike, so as it were. Here, let's play this. See this exchange. I'm going to play this exchange. And here we go.
Currently, our currency does not reflect the diversity of individuals that have contributed to our great American history. He followed the announcement by directing the Bureau of Engraving and Printing to accelerate plans for the redesign, so the final design concepts would be unveiled in 2020, the 100-year anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which granted women the right to vote, which we celebrated yesterday. As you know, 2020 is only 1 year away, and since Secretary Liu's departure, we have not heard anything regarding the status of the currency redesign. Will the redesign meet the 2020 deadline, yes or no?
So let me comment that the primary reason we've looked at redesigning the currency is for counterfeiting issues. Based upon this, the $20 bill will now not come out till 2028. The $10 bill and the $50 bill will come out with new features beforehand. So the answer is, it is my responsibility now to focus on what is the issue of counterfeiting and the security features. The ultimate decision on the redesign will most likely be another secretary's down the road.
I'm sorry, I just want to be clear for the record. So yes or no, will you meet what was originally the 2020 redesign deadline? Yes or no?
Again, to be clear, the redesign that we are focused on at we will meet the security feature redesign in 2020. The imagery feature will not be an issue that comes up until most likely 2026.
And I'm just wondering if you could explain that to me, because after an exhaustive community process where people who organized for quite some time, and you said you do share my sentiments and opinion that our currency should be more reflective of the contributions and the diversity of those contributions. So why the delay?
No, I didn't say that the currency should be reflective.
Well, you said imagery.
I said imagery, not referring to currency.
Okay, so do you believe that, do you support Harriet Tubman being on the $20 bill?
I've made no decision as it relates to that, and that decision won't be made in as I said,
but there was a community process. There was a community process.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Harriet Tubman that makes those $20 bills so insecure. So insecure. I just cropped
the
up
facial
on the
features easier to counterfeit.
Yeah, it's so
it's science.
It's science. It's science, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's go to this clip. I'm going to get to some of these stories about what's going on with HUD and also with immigrants in this country, and particularly children are being leveraged by the administration in a despicable but maybe not terribly surprising way. But before we do, we haven't spent too much time on the 2020 primaries. I mean, it's still heating up. Obviously, we're paying some attention to it. We have not said the words Beto O'Rourke in any meaningful way for weeks, and it has been strange.
I've never said that word in a meaningful way, though. I just want to be clear.
fair enough. And but Beto O'Rourke came out with a huge splash. He since lost some of his key organizers, Becky Bond, who a lot of people, I mean, Becky Bond has been on this program both in regards to her organizing during the Bernie campaign and the book that she wrote with her co-author, as well as she was on this program many times when she was working at Credo. Both when they were sponsoring us, but just in terms of their actions. She's a big activist. She left the campaign, not clear why, really, but, you know, it's not hard to figure these things out in some respects as to they moving in different directions, and apparently the direction they were moving in was down. Beto O'Rourke is dropping like a lead balloon, which is impressive to the extent that he wasn't that high up anyways. So there was no ability for the lead to gain velocity as it dropped, right?
That's the way it was like standing high up on a table, but you know, in a metaphorical sense. No,
I was born to poll at 7% and do a lot of ridiculous videos.
Well, that's the point. He was at 7,
away.
And now he's closer to like 3 or 2%.
It's Becky Bond's fault.
You know, part of it is, and this again, like, this is why I will reiterate my prediction, and it's just, I mean, part of it may be aspirational, that I think Joe Biden in particular is not long for his high poll numbers, or at least this high, because Joe Biden has the advantage that Beto O'Rourke does not have, in that he is that people think they know him, or at the very least they know his name, and they know him as the vice president. And just like with Beto O'Rourke, as it became clear that there was a certain lack of that his rhetoric did not match up when it started to talk about actual policies. And it's much more difficult in this round, it seems to me, in this primary than in past primaries, to get by without having fully developed and concrete and frankly, appealing policies than it has been in the past, largely because Elizabeth Warren has been coming out with so many proposals, largely because Bernie Sanders is so specific with his proposals. It makes it much harder for the other candidates to sort of ride sort of broad themes. And here is Beto O'Rourke. He had a CNN town hall last night in Iowa. He's asked a question by a woman who has, I think, ALS or MS? MS. And basically, she's talking about how expensive her drugs are. And so Beto, gives a fairly, unspecific, fairly sort of like a sufficient answer from in the past, which is, you've just told me about a problem. I'm going to reiterate the problem, but with different sets of facts, which, all candidates do this. All candidates do this. And that communicates to you and the audience that I understand the problem. And for the most part, every campaign in the past has been to do that part about it is like 75 to 80 to 90% of what is expected. Acknowledge the problem. I, as a citizen who, has some passing awareness of politics, I mean, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking your average person. I just want you to acknowledge the problem, and I will leave it up to you to solve it and figure out what the solution is. But if you acknowledge the problem to me, you've won 90% of my vote. That's the way it's worked in the past to a large extent. I think people are just getting more savvy, particularly in the context of the primary, where that's not enough. I mean, I've mentioned in the past that Barack Obama, during in the run-up to Iowa, came out and said Social Security is in crisis. And he didn't offer any specific policy later on. Before he became president, he was talking about entitlement reform. But the fact is, Social Security was not in crisis. However, it was an acknowledgement to older voters in Iowa that he understood what was most important to them, which was protecting their Social Security. And the fact that he would notice that there was a crisis, even though there wasn't a crisis, made them feel like, I don't know if there's a crisis or not. I believe there's a crisis because I'm so worried about getting my Social Security. But the fact that he's acknowledging it, he's my guy. He's now in my trust circle, as they call it, because he acknowledges my experience, which is anxiety about, getting that check every month. And so Beto does that, and then he sits down and he thinks, okay, it's over. And because there has been so much emphasis on policy, Dana Bash asked a question that in any other cycle, I don't think she would ask, which is like, why your proposal, which is Medicare for America, which, to be honest with you, like, it's so narrowly tailored that it's hard for me to see how it's really fundamentally different from like just a public option in the ACA, which I think it is maybe, but it's a public option that is really not even, you can't even compete with it. You actually have to be means tested into it. And you have to, it sounds like you have to be broke. It sounds like sort of like a Medicaid option.
Right. Is it like what they did in New York here?
I mean, it's, I'm not sure how it measures up to that, but
if you're destitute enough, we'll kick in Medicaid.
I mean, that's what it sounds like. Now, but I don't know the specifics about the assets that you can have with Medicaid. You can have virtually no assets. I mean, it varies slightly
Maybe
to
he
state
means
to state.
Make it more generous in terms of who can access it.
Maybe, but that was the
It's
expansion
unclear.
of Medicaid in the context of Obamacare.
Yeah,
but it's not. He calls it Medicare for America because, of course, that sounds like Medicare for all. Like, well, I'm just in America, so that works for me.
It's M4A. Don't you support M4A?
Exactly.
I want Medicare for Singapore too.
Exactly. All right, but
that's my position.
In any other year, that would be sufficient. But Dana Bash has to ask the question because it is the most obvious question in the context of, with so many candidates coming out making an issue of this, and here this goes, and it doesn't. I don't think it goes very well for Beto because his answer is just not sufficient. Here it is.
So you mentioned your plan, or the plan that you signed on to, Medicare for America. Why not Medicare for all?
I think about Diane. I think about Joey, a young man, 27 years old, that I met in Laredo, Texas. He's been to a doctor once in his life because he does not have insurance. And that doctor told him that he had diabetes, that he had glaucoma, and that he would be dead before the age of 40 because he's not getting any care right now in this country. Joey, Diane, others, they don't have time for us to get to the perfect solution. If we were to start from scratch, maybe we would start with a single payer, but we've got to work with the system that we have here today. The surest, quickest way to get there is Medicare for America. It guarantees every single person in this country gets the care that they need to live to their full potential and do those things that they were placed on this planet to perform in the first place. So that's why I support that plan.
Okay, so if I understand his answer, it's Texas still hasn't expanded Medicaid, so Joey's SOL. This guy, Joey, age 27, still goes by Joey. That's fine. And
way to zero in on the most pertinent
I don't know that.
detail.
I mean, I'm like telling like
You're thinking that maybe Beto's taking some liberties here?
I don't know. I don't know about that. But let's just assume that.
Let's just call you Joey.
Okay. Edwin, let's.
Right.
Jose, maybe it's better if we just call you Joey. Okay. But anyways.
Miguelito, right, you're Joey.
His answer is, if we attempt to get Medicare for all, I guess it's either it will take too long, because which presumably only could mean like we won't get it. We won't get it at all, because the legislative process, there's no reason to believe that his Medicare for America, when we have already seen the Republicans fight against Obamacare, is going to be any quicker. It's not like what he's talking about can be instituted with any other alacrity. And if it's just about expansion, I mean, if his whole plan just relies on executive action, why not just say, I'm for Medicare for all, and in the meantime, these are the executive action steps I'm going to take? I mean, the answer falls apart with the next question, which is, what do you mean? What do you mean? I don't get it. Are you saying that Medicare for all can't pass and yours can with a Republican Congress? Like, what is it that you're arguing? And Dana Bash doesn't ask that question, but it doesn't matter at this point for Beto, because that is clearly not sufficient. All right, this stuff, like, Beto is not going to go from 3% in the polls to 40% in the polls by saying, I know what the best thing is, but I don't think we can do it. So I've got something that is subpar that maybe we can get through. I mean, that is his answer, and that's not going to work. But the point is, that's Joe Biden's campaign. Except for Joe Biden has a little bit more attitude, like, I'm sorry, forgive me, Father. And I'm not cool enough to want to subscribe to the thing that works.
And let me tell you.
Listen, what we're going to go for is something that maybe we can get the Republicans to sign on to, even though they have signed on to nothing. Even though the guy who sits atop the Senate right now has made it his 30-year-long project as a lawmaker to wreak the havoc he is wreaking now, not only on the Senate, but on our country. I mean, it is a completely, in many respects, when Joe Biden gets asked that question, his answer is going to actually be worse than Beto O'Rourke's.
I far prefer Joe Biden's style, though. And I have to say, like, there is something, at least Joe Biden is giving you, like, it's not going to happen. Versus, like, here's a whole bunch of words and filler and idealism and complete nonsense, and it's not going to happen, and we can just let people continue to suffer under the system. Well, I mean, it's quite possible that there are a lot of people out there who are going to vote for Joe Biden because they like his style better, and he doesn't seem as namby-pamby. I think that's what mostly
Beto.
It is. Most of this stuff comes down to style.
But I have a feeling that in the context of a primary and debates, that's just not going to be sufficient. Now, part of it is also a function of, like, who he's on the debate stage with, because there's going to be 2 debates each time, and it's quite possible that Joe Biden may be in the Beto, Buttigieg, heat, and isn't paired up with someone like Warren or Sanders, where the contrast will be that stark.
So how are they breaking those up? Are they breaking those up by poll numbers or not?
No, I think it's by lottery.
Oh, so he could, if he's not up there with Sanders or Warren, he could luck the hell out. Because if he's in there Buttigieging and O'Rourking, first of all, he'll look good, relatively speaking, because I think compared to the fake charisma of Beto and Buttigieg's ridiculous kind of faux wonkery, Biden will come off better, and no one will hold him accountable because they're corporatists too.
Sad Beto, though, still into it. The sadder he gets,
the
more I want to have him over to listen to Fugazi records.
But I mean, I know that, and I don't know quite what when you have to declare for Senate in Texas. Little Marco was able to get out of the Florida, was able to run in Florida. Even after his failed presidential bid. So maybe there's time for Beto to get in, and maybe he can transfer that over. But I mean, honestly,
just do it, dude. Come on, you're wasting everybody's time.
I mean,
just run for Senate.
What better soaring rhetoric than to hold a press conference and say, when I look about how I can serve this country the best, it's clear to me that even though I know I was meant to run for president, I'm going to sacrifice my self destiny and run for Senate.
It would be like the Ted Cruz challenge era all over again. Everyone would be like, "Yeah, Beto, we
100%.
love you, man."
Yeah,
all coverage will be positive here on out if he runs for Senate.
There you go. There's our promise to you, Beto.
Positive YouTube titles.
Hey, do you love the thrill of an escape room looking for clues and solving puzzles? Introducing Hunt a Killer. It's a monthly subscription game where you become a detective immersed in a murder mystery. Each month you'll receive crime scene photos, evidence, motive, and suspect information that you'll need to use to solve a crime. It's so interactive and convincing that it looks and feels real. You'll be racking your brain to solve the mystery and anxiously awaiting the next box of clues. It's perfect to play solo, during date night, or with friends for a game night so you can swap theories. I'm going to do this. I have some friends who are starting to get into game nights like this. And this could be pretty good. I mean, you think about how many people just watch all those crime shows and listen to the crime podcast. Now you have a chance to be the detective. Right. This is like literally walking around and playing Clue, but better. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off your first box. They only accept 200 members per day, so you got to hurry to take advantage of this offer. That's huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off your first box. Do not email me and complain that you didn't move quick enough for this and you got shut out that day. huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off your first book. Your first box, huntakiller.com/majority.
Matter of fact, don't email me at all.
Exactly.
Don't ever complain to me, do you?
Never.
Hunt a Killer's on you.
I am so.
You get Hunt a Killer.
I am so close to this, and Brendan's was telling me about this company that is. Brendan's personally vouching for this company.
That's right. I would say every aspect of this really comes down to.
I'm talking about Boosted. Here we go.
Brendan's into it.
All right. Well, his friend works there, and he says it's good company. Time spent in traffic is not time spent exploring, creating, and having fun. The amount of time that I just like getting places, there's always like a 25-minute walk that I've got to take. That would be great if I could make it 5 minutes. Well, you can use Boosted when you need to get there faster. It's designed to provide a luxurious experience. Boosted vehicle-grade electric skateboards and scooters are the modern solution to your transportation woes. They have a 22-mile range, maximum speed of 24 miles an hour. Boosted is perfect for both running to the store and traveling across town. Particularly, when you live in a small town, even this would be even better in many respects. Why take the car?
You could own a small town with one of these.
They have 5 options to pick from. They have their new scooter, the Boosted Rev. But either way, there's a personal electric vehicle that's tailor-made for you, and they start at $61 a month with financing. It's no wonder Boosted was one of Time Magazine's best inventions of 2018. And I'll tell you what I like about Boosted when I've been all over their site now. Everybody's wearing a helmet. That's super important, folks. Wear a helmet. There's no better time than now to change how you move. Because now Boosted is offering our listeners $75 off the purchase of an electric vehicle when you use the code MAJORITY at checkout. Go to boostedboards.com and use the code MAJORITY at checkout to get $75 off your vehicle. That's boostedboards.com and promo code MAJORITY at checkout for $75. So cool, these things. All right, let's get into this. What's going on with the immigration? I'll just briefly tell you that the House Intelligence Committee will not enforce their subpoena against Bill Barr, which was the plan after Wednesday. The Justice Department agreed at the 11th hour to produce redacted material and underlying information from the special counsel's report that the panel sought, albeit more slowly than it wanted. I mean, they're just stringing this out. I mean, and we're going to talk more about this. I get Mehdi Hassan coming on Friday. We're going to talk more about impeachment. But it is becoming more and more likely it is becoming more and more clear that this is what the administration wants. They think that, rightly or wrongly, they look at Bill Clinton, and I've been saying this for months. It would not be irrational for them to look at what happened to Bill Clinton and assume the same thing's going to happen to Donald Trump, which is
Republicans win seats, bad for politics.
Well, the impeachment came in the second term.
98.
In 98.
Right. So you help him get reelected.
And, well, no, it helped.
I'm saying Trump, if you transfer. Is that what you're saying? It would be
his
politically
popularity
beneficial?
went up. His favorability went up. I mean, that's basically it. I mean, he went from, maybe I think in the 40s or 50s of favorability, high 40s, low 50s, to, close to like 60s and mid 60s in terms of favorability. And in fact, the whole movement of Move On was first a function of move on from the impeachment. And so from their perspective, I think it's quite possible they believe it's going to help them. Now, there's really no way to know. There's really no way to know if that's the case. People can speculate. I think there's arguments on both sides. But what is becoming apparent in terms of the dynamic that was not the case during the Clinton years is that the cost to Democrats for not impeaching is much higher than the cost it would have been to Republicans in that day and age. So, but we'll talk more about that with Mehdi Hasan. But that should be in the back of people's minds because that's what's going on here. We have, even the EPA is refusing to provide information to House oversight committees, which of course has nothing to do with the witch hunt. So this is not about them. This is about them being, I think, purposefully obstructionist. I mean, and the purpose being to convince Democrats or to put Democrats into a position which is basically a rock and a hard place. And so it's not just a question of goading the Democrats into impeachment. It is putting them in two untenable positions. And generally, I think it's just simply as a life rule. When you're in two untenable positions, choose the one that actually is just the ethically and morally right thing to do. I mean, if both options are going to be problematic for you, do the one that makes you feel like that you're not doing a bad thing too. Never mind an unstrategic thing, because those tend to end up working out better. Meanwhile, there was a confidential IRS legal memo that was prepared in anticipation by the IRS for Steve Mnuchin, anticipating that a Democratic Congress could seek Donald Trump's taxes. And it's a confidential IRS memo, or was confidential. Not clear how this got out. But the Washington Post got a hold of it. Mnuchin has rejected, as of last Friday, a subpoena from the House Ways and Means Committee to turn over the tax returns. This legal memo says the tax returns must be given to Congress unless the president exerts executive privilege. This is according to a copy of the memo obtained by the Washington Post. It contradicts the Trump administration justification for denying lawmakers' requests for the tax returns. Mnuchin denied the returns by arguing there's no legislative purpose for demanding them. There's a statute, and the statute says that Congress can demand them. They don't need to justify it, and they certainly don't need to justify it to Treasury Department. The disclosure of tax returns to the committee, according to the IRS memo, is mandatory. requiring the secretary to disclose returns and return information requested by the tax writing chairs. That's of the Ways and Means Committee. It's a 10-page document. And it says specifically that the law, quote, does not allow the secretary to exercise discretion in disclosing the information provided the statutory conditions are met, and directly rejects the reason Mnuchin has cited for withholding the information. The secretary's obligation to disclose return and return information would not be affected by the failure of a tax writing committee to state a reason for the request. So not only does the reason not have to be sufficient, there doesn't have to be a reason.
This is as substantive as the Harriet Tubman explanation.
Exactly. Now, supposedly, the agency can refuse to comply if executive privilege is invoked. But it's unclear to me what possible reason, justification there could be invoking executive privilege when these are tax returns that were filed before Donald Trump was president, never involved any people who work in the executive. Executive privilege is supposed to protect the deliberations, private deliberations that you need if you're going to be president of the United States. If I'm president of the United States, I need to be able to say to my advisors, stuff that I wouldn't want to be public. Even if I'm not just expressing my deep hatred for people who are not white, as Donald Trump, there could be other things that are actually not racist that he says that really also you don't want to be made public. I'm sure there's something that he said, but that
delusional things.
There's
all sorts of things.
It's impossible to contemplate. I mean, I guess arguably it's possible to contemplate in the context of his taxes that he files as president, although I find that hard to believe too. And I can't come up with a scenario, but there's can't possibly be a scenario for taxes that have been filed before he was president. So, but be that as it may, that is going to help with the court cases in attempting to get his taxes. All right, but let's go to this HUD stuff. Yesterday, Ben Carson was in front of Congress in the House Oversight. Was this the House Oversight Committee that Ben Carson was in? Quite sure. But it was a HUD hearing. And Ben Carson is up there. And this is following the publishing of a proposal on Friday of last week. Right now, if you are a child and you are an American citizen, you are eligible if you meet the financial requirements for subsidized housing. And your family can join you in that subsidized housing. However, the way that the subsidy is calculated is based upon only those members of your family who are American citizens. So if you are born here in this country, maybe your parents came here on a some type of visa, you're born here, you're an American citizen, their visa expires, they stay here, they're not an American citizen, or their visas have expired, or maybe they came in through the border, it doesn't matter. The policy has been, if you are an American citizen, you cannot afford housing, that housing can be subsidized. However, if it's a 2-bedroom apartment and the price cost, I don't know, $800, let's say, and they will subsidize it prorated based upon how many American citizens are living in that apartment. So they may only give you, there's 4 of you in there, they may only give you $200 if there's only 1 American citizen. But as long as there's one, they will give you that $200. This new proposal would prohibit families in which at least one member is undocumented from obtaining subsidized housing. So it could be that there are 3 of you who live in that apartment who are citizens, and your grandmother you brought in from another country. Or there was one child who stayed behind who was not an American citizen. Or one mother or the father. HUD is only subsidizing the American citizens in that apartment. But now HUD is apparently going to prevent the entire family from being in there, or not allowing anybody else in there except for an American citizen. HUD assumes that most mixed households will leave the HUD-assisted housing as a result of this rule, according to this analysis by HUD, because of the fear that the family being separated would lead to would lead to people leaving the homes. Now, here's the thing about this. You've got Ben Carson is justifying this by saying it's common sense to just have American citizens in there. But what makes this even worse, Ben Carson's up there calling for 15%, 16% reduction in HUD's budget. This will increase the expense for HUD because now they will subsidize every member of that apartment. It will not decrease the amount of people who are unable to afford decent housing because you're going to put 4 different people in there and you're going to kick 4 other people out. You're going to increase the homelessness amongst children. 55,000 children are anticipated by HUD's own analysis to be impacted by this. 55,000 children. So it does not in any way help the affordable housing crisis that we have in this country. It cuts into HUD's budget, which he wants to shrink anyways, which means that they're going to take the money because they're not going to get new money to deal with this greater expense. They're going to take it away from the upkeep of these places and the upkeep of other housing that HUD sponsors. It's going to cost HUD at least almost $200 million more. Their own analysis says it would exacerbate homelessness. And there's an anticipation that it's going to cost the agency money in rent because families with undocumented immigrants living in there pay their rent more reliably because they are afraid of the scrutiny. Right? This is why undocumenteds are not going en masse to vote in local elections or any elections because they're afraid. So here is Ben Carson on the Hill. And this guy knows, apparently, we played this yesterday about the Katie Porter exchange where he didn't know what an REO was, a real estate owned, which is a term about basically when an agency or a bank takes over in a foreclosure because they can't resolve it for the homeowner. Here he is talking to Representative Sylvia Garcia. Why HUD is looking to make children of immigrants homeless.
So you're going to shift 55,000 children from being with their families to a homeless status. What's going to happen with these children? Have you thought this program through?
Well, maybe what will happen with them is that you and Congress job and solve the problem.
There you go.
The problem was solved, well, not solved, but slightly mitigated because of, at least theoretically, what HUD is supposed to do.
Well, this has been a policy
He's
for 20 years.
devastating
Over
the
20
policy
years.
that was the slight dent in the problem. I mean, that's just such immoral sophistry.
Yeah. Yep. Now, this is all, again, part of a broader program to attack immigrants in this country. And we'll get back to that in a moment because there's a horrible story about immigrants who are being put in solitary confinement in at least half of the occasions for no reason at all, or really horribly despicable reasons. And this is more of a problem with the agency of ICE than it is necessarily just the Trump administration, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we have more to say about Ben Carson's tenure at HUD and the pathetic nature of it. So yesterday, Ben Carson, and this is also a failure of the media. And I saw a very good tweet about this. Ben Carson, it's not just that he got humiliated by Katie Porter yesterday when he didn't know what a real estate owned or what that term meant in the context of foreclosure and the disparity between the number of foreclosures under FHA auspices versus Fannie or Freddie Mae. Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And to make light of it, the fact that Ben Carson thought that real estate owned, that Katie Porter was saying Oreo, he put out a funny tweet, his agency did. Here's a picture of him holding a bag of Oreos to make the joke of like, at the end of the day, and here he is, he's sending a package of Oreos, family size, to Representative Porter. See, I don't have any hard feelings about the fact that I had no idea about what a major component of my agency does.
Talk about the banality of evil.
Yes. Well, what's even more problematic is that he did this got more write-up than the actual issue itself. Because reporters to go in and look at, like, why is it that the FHA is basically executing more foreclosures than Fannie and Freddie? And I think this is on a per capita basis. And Katie Porter made the point after Ben Carson humiliated himself that this is also leading to a lot of urban blight. Because when you have a foreclosed home that is owned by a bank or an agency in this instance, they're not mowing the lawn. They're not keeping vandals out. They're not, when you don't live in a house, even for like a couple of months, things start falling apart on their own. The general upkeep, things like water and HVAC stuff, if these aren't used on a regular basis, it becomes problematic. It's like if you let your car sit for too long, the brakes start to rust out. This is what houses need to be lived in. And when they're not, they start to fall apart. And when they start to fall apart and you start to get this type of blight, you start to hurt the entire neighborhood.
Yeah,
Not
but
to mention,
then real estate speculators can come in and make money on blighted areas.
Well, sometimes it's just they sit there and blight.
No, most of the time it's like the girl with tattoos said, it turns into good things for speculators.
But that's actually not the case.
Okay,
there's a lot of times where that blight just exists for years and years and years, and people get trapped in these neighborhoods, and they can't sell their homes because nobody wants to move in to that area because there's so much blight. It breeds crime and obviously other problems, and not to mention the people who get foreclosed upon. They lose their homes. So Ben Carson went on a little bit of a tour on the right to, I guess, in some way, relieve the embarrassment. Who better to rub salve on that embarrassment than Stuart Varney?
Yes, it was. First of all, it was 3.5 hours of testimony. So you can see that some of the networks are only interested in those kinds of sound bites used to ridicule. You know, the fact of the matter is I was having difficulty hearing her.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm very familiar with foreclosed properties and with REOs, have read extensively about them, knew about them even as a teenager. There was a lot of blighted areas.
Pause it for 1 second. He didn't just say Oreo when she said that. She said, no, REO. Do you know what that stands for? And he said, real estate organizations?
It had been going on for 3 hours, and maybe some of us are human beings and don't spend all of our lives looking at Social Security and Medicare updates. That's called a subtweet.
Or some of us may not even spend our lives digging into any of the literature about the agency that we're running for the U.S. government. Continue.
Detroit, where I grew up. But what is interesting is that, you know, when a family gets into a problem with their mortgage and it's backed by our agency, we go through a lot of procedures with the banks to make sure that they don't get foreclosed upon. In a few cases where they do, obviously we're able to sell those properties very quickly. And the REO portfolio, just over the last 10 years, has dramatically decreased by tenfold. Yeah. You know, 65,000 down to 6,500.
Pause it. What happened 10 years ago? 10 years ago, it was 2009.
There was
we had the greatest crash in the value of real estate, perhaps, in the history of the country.
Would you like to know what really happened?
And so the number of foreclosed homes there, obviously. Now, of course, it's dropped 10 years because those homes at one point, they go away. It runs out. The number of foreclosures that are happening there. But the bottom line is the FHA, the agency that he oversees as Secretary of HUD, is having more foreclosures, continues to have far more foreclosures. She stated to him after that moment, that exchange, that there is a massive study that shows the FHA is responsible in many respects for an enormous amount of blight. He is lying to Stuart Varney.
Yeah. You know, 65,000 down to 6,500. So I suspect when Katie Porter was an expert in this area, things were very different. That's why I invited her to speak with our staff that deals with these so they can bring her up to date. Yeah. Maybe she would then be able to understand what's going on.
I think they were just having a go at you.
Yeah. I think they were just having a go at you.
That's called a haymaker. So I was Katie. What she did was she was at university years ago, and now she doesn't know what she thinks she knows.
Well, one of us doesn't know what's going on. I think I know who it is.
I think we all know who it is. I didn't want to be rude. It was embarrassing to watch her throw these terms around. They're out of date. And now you have this smug guy whose ass is on YouTube just talking all sorts of verbal nonsense. Meanwhile, the economy collapsed because there was a lack of prayer.
Katie Porter and Sylvia Garcia were the only ones who embarrassed Ben Carson. Ayanna Presley went on to ask Carson about the disrepair of HUD houses. Now, understand, this policy that they announced, in addition to Carson looking for a cut in his own budget at HUD, the policy that they announced about kicking out families, separating families who have any undocumented immigrants living in the household, is going to increase costs for HUD They're going to have to pay more subsidies. They're going to get less back in rent, according to their own analysis. And they're going to have to take money away from upkeep of HUD homes. So just understand that in the context of of what Presley is asking him.
When we are eliminating a stock but not increasing supply, people in the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District would have to work 84 hours to afford a decent one-bedroom at fair market rent. Doris Bunty, who's a former Massachusetts state representative in my district and was the first African-American woman to hold the position of head of BHA, the first public housing tenant to lead a public housing agency in a major city. She said, being poor is not a character flaw. I agree. But again, given your medical background, perhaps you could weigh in on the health consequences of failing to invest in safe housing. Mr. Secretary, since I am short on time here, yes or no, is stable and safe housing a social determinant of health?
Sounds like you have not been here and heard most of my testimony.
Please just answer the question, reclaiming my time. Yes or no, is stable and safe housing a social determinant of health?
There is no question that housing is an important part of health.
Yes or no?
No question that it's a part of health.
It is well documented that health problems such as lead poisoning, asthma, and injuries from trips and falls, especially amongst our senior population, can be linked to substandard housing conditions. Combined, these conditions result in billions a year in healthcare costs. Many of those most at risk of developing these conditions reside in public and federally assisted housing. Yes or no? If left unaddressed, do you believe the substandard public housing conditions pose a risk to tenants' physical, mental, and emotional health? If left unaddressed.
Yes or no? Can you ask me some questions yourself?
You don't get to dictate what my line of questioning is, reclaiming my time. You're a very smart man, so you understand the question. Please answer it. Yes or no, if left unaddressed, which I believe they are unaddressed because this budget does not reflect the need, do you believe the substandard public housing conditions pose a risk to tenants' physical, mental, and emotional health?
You already know the answer to that.
Yes or no?
You know the answer.
Yes or no? I know the answer. Do you know the answer? Yes or no?
Reclaiming my time.
You don't get to do that.
No.
The time belongs to the gentle lady.
The evidence is clear that if we do not invest the necessary funds today, we will pay the price in people's health tomorrow. And what is this administration's response? Cuts. Cuts to crucial funding like the Public Housing Operating Fund and the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, Section 202 housing for elderly and Section 811, housing for persons with disabilities, and even the complete elimination of the Public Housing Capital Fund. These policies are devoid of empathy and humanity, and you've been talking in the abstract, but I want to get specific. There's a Miss Northcross, a mother and a grandmother living in Brighton in my district. She's raised her children and now cares for her grandchildren in property with thick mold on the walls. Her son was recently hospitalized, look at the pictures here, because of bone tumors in his arm and leg. He needs surgery to save and improve his quality of life, but he won't get it because the family must have a sanitary, stable housing condition first. Their actual home literally poses a risk of post-op injury and infection. Her question to you is, what do they become? When you raise children in these conditions, what can they become? So yes or no? Do Miss Norcross and her family deserve to live in these conditions because they are poor?
If you've listened to any...
Yes or no, do they deserve to live in these conditions because they are poor?
You know very well...
Would you let your grandmother live in public housing?
You know very well...
Would you let your grandmother live in public housing, yes or no?
You know very well...
Under your watch and at your helm, would you allow your grandmother to live in public housing under these conditions?
It would be very nice if you would stop...
You stated that
the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Lawson, is recognized for...
He really is. He's a psychopath.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that he would have done that if Ayanna Pressley was white?
I was thinking that.
Like that level of disrespect. Like I just don't think that he gets away with that. If he is talking, to anybody but a black woman, I don't know how he gets away. I mean, that attitude is just unbelievable.
I think
I wouldn't put it past him.
I think he would do it to anybody that was advocating for people in low-income housing. I would definitely do it to Bella Abzug. I'll tell you that much.
I don't know.
I reserve the right for my time back.
I wish you would stop being that way.
I reserve my time. Would you stop being that way?
The contempt he's like the way he
I mean,
laughed.
honestly, It's disgusting.
He had one moment in the campaign, I think it was actually after, when he was a surrogate for Trump. And, they were outlining, all of Trump's various disgusting behavior and saying, like, just the basic, like, hey, you're a Christian. And he snapped. He has this very weird thing. And he was just like, that's crap. Can I finish? And he does. It's interesting. He does
He's a bad
have.
guy.
Yeah, no. Behind that sort of like coma exterior, he's a genuinely very awful person and a disgusting, empathy-free person. Exactly who they want torturing people in public housing.
It's disgusting. He's got the same thing as Trump going on. He's like, no matter how serious it is, he's going to act like a high school bully.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It really is. It just sort of shockingly disgusting. All right, we got to take a break. Head into the fun half. We've got clips of Steve Mnuchin at the House Oversight Committee hearing. This on what's that? Was it financial services? It says House Oversight here. Oh, House Financial Services. Okay. This is all, and particularly just sort of becomes a little bit more hypercharged with this leak of this IRS memo. We've also got clips of some of the abortion protests across the country, people seeking their rights to have sovereignty over their own bodies, and a horrible story. I guess this is the fun half. Let's just, I want to play this clip too before we go, because people should be aware of this. And this is, and I want to make this clear, this report from NBC is about the use of solitary confinement by ICE for people who are, this sounds just, it's unbelievable. But it's basically for people who are mentally ill or disabled, or some instances because they're transgender or gay, or because they have reported abuse from guards or other detainees. They are put into solitary confinement. Remember that most psychiatrists will say solitary confinement is a form of torture. And for folks with mental illness, it's even worse. This is a practice, apparently, that has been going on with ICE for at least since 2012. These records document solitary confinement cases from 2012 to 2017. They were obtained under the Freedom of Information Act by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. They were shared with NBC and apparently other news organizations. So this predates Trump. In nearly 1/3 of the cases, 1/3 of the cases of people put in solitary confinement were determined by ICE itself to have a mental illness. Only half the cases of where people were put into solitary confinement, according to ICE's own documents, only half the cases involved punishment for rule violations. The other reasons were just because, I guess, theoretically to protect them or from themselves or other people. And which is not to say that there should be anybody going to solitary confinement. But even according to their own records, ICE only put only half the people they put in solitary confinement were done so because it was being punished. Here is a part of that report from NBC.
We have created and continue to support a system that involves widespread abuse of human beings.
Ellen Gallagher works in the Office of the Inspector General at the Department of Homeland Security. In 2014, she was with a different DHS office where she reviewed civil rights complaints and was troubled by what she saw in ICE's own files. Hundreds of immigrant detainees being put in solitary confinement every week. Most troubling for her, cases involving the mentally ill. A schizophrenic detainee sentenced to 390 days in solitary for throwing human waste at a guard. Another mentally ill detainee got 15 days because he had a green pepper in his sock.
The notes specifically said he had hidden the green pepper.
A green pepper.
Half a green pepper.
ICE's policy states that detainees should be segregated only after careful consideration of alternatives.
Solitary confinement was being used as the first resort, not the last resort. And sometimes it was the only approach.
In a statement to NBC News, a spokesperson says ICE is firmly committed to the safety and welfare of all those in its custody. The use of restrictive housing in ICE detention facilities is exceedingly rare, but at times necessary to ensure the safety of staff and individuals in a facility. Between 2014 and 2018, Gallagher sent memos detailing her concerns up the chain.
How would you characterize the overall response to the concerns you raised?
Muted.
Why are you speaking up now?
Because if I didn't speak up, I don't think I could live with myself.
An NBC News review of ICE data found more than 8,000 cases of immigrants held in solitary confinement in local, private, and federal facilities under both the Obama and Trump administrations. A third of them involved the mentally ill, including one put in isolation for nearly 2 years. At least 7 have committed suicide while in solitary. Dulce Rivera, an immigrant from Honduras, tried to hang herself while in solitary in New Mexico.
I mean, imagine if that report, everything, word for word, was done about, I don't know, China or any other country for that matter.
Russia.
We've invaded countries for way less than that.
I mean,
used as a pretext.
Just imagine that is just presented in, all the participants in there just were speaking a different language and we were just reading subtitles. It would, the outcry would be amazing. I mean, this is, when they talk about abolishing ICE, which apparently has not been, it's sort of like, left the consciousness for the moment. This is why. This is a perfect example of an agency that is simply out of control and is so decrepit and corrupt at its core that it's incapable of being reformed. This is, I imagine, also a part of, the privatization, because the controls over who administer this stuff is just, much more, I guess, relaxed. I mean, it's really...
obscene. Absolutely obscene.
Man, we're doing a lot of bad news today. The good news is that the right-wing a-holes who were in the government of Austria all got caught on tape basically willing to accept bribes for a Russian oligarch.
Favor to be open. This is something we can
They've
negotiate.
all had to resign. So how's that for some happy news?
I would say they're a bunch of losers.
We also have some fun Brexiter on Brexiter violence.
Yeah, let's save that.
Oh, man, that is so good. That's going to definitely improve everybody's mood.
Right. We're going to go into the fun half, mostly fun stuff in the fun half. Folks, just a reminder, you can support this program by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only support the free show, we give you extra content every day. And not only do we do that, but we also give it to you commercial free. On Monday, for instance, Memorial Day, we're not going to have a free show. We're just going to put up a members show, and it's going to be an archived interview that I did with Chris Hayes back in 2009 or 10 when we're talking about, it's an interesting interview because we talk about some of the problems that we were anticipating coming forward and the Republicans' attack on norms at that time. I know this was only supposed to be about Trump, but we will put that out for members. You will have access to it if you're a member. How's that? Also, introducing Hunt a Killer, a monthly subscription game where you become a detective immersed in a murder mystery. It's so interactive and convincing that it looks and feels real. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off your first box. They only accept 200 members per day, so hurry to take advantage of this offer. That's huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off your first box. huntakiller.com/majority. Michael, last night was Tuesday. Apparently, you did your so-called...
Wait, real quick, before we get to that, do you want to talk about the Mark Crispian Miller thing?
Oh, right. Yes. We're going to put a link in this.
There's a link on the blog post.
Okay. Longtime listeners of this program will remember that one of our regular guests back on the radio was a guy named Mark Crispian Miller. He was a professor at NYU, communications professor. In fact, I had a very funny moment with him on the original Majority Report. I was quoting a piece that I had read about television. This was, 10 or 15 years ago that I had read maybe 10 or 15 years earlier. Maybe I read it in the early 90s. And I couldn't remember where it was from. I thought it was from a David Foster Wallace essay. But it was basically about the dynamic of television, where the act of watching television, and this may have changed based upon, all the technology, frankly, and the bar being lowered. But at the time, the act of being television, basically, the subtext of it was, because you're not being watched, because you're not on television, you're less than. And like the whole experience was to put focus on people behind this glass. And somehow this came up in our conversation with him. And I said, I can't remember. I think it was David Foster Wallace, and he goes, that was me. I actually quoted, I didn't realize that he had written the book that I had read, and it was a total McLuhan moment. And he said, that was me. I wrote that. And I was like, oh, I'm so happy to meet you. And perhaps I should have done a little more research. But he apparently, and this is another one of those stories. It's like, what the F? But he apparently has had undiagnosed Lyme disease that he's had since 2011. And I have a lot of experience with Lyme disease. My ex-wife had Lyme disease. It took about a year to get rid of. Unfortunately, she caught it fairly early. But he is suffering from all sorts of secondary symptoms from the Lyme disease. He has an opportunity to get some oxygenization therapy, but apparently my guess is that his insurance doesn't cover it. And so you can find, he has been, and his production has been way off, obviously, as of late, but things like Hidden News in the past. So if you have the ability to help him get to his $20,000 goal, do so. We'll put a link.
He also curated something called the Forbidden Bookshelf series.
Yes,
which
right.
has a bunch of really great books. There's one called Lords of Creation by Frederick Lewis Allen. That's great. One on the Phoenix program in Vietnam. It really, I want to read everything in that series.
I think we may have had him on early on in this version of the show to talk about that. I feel like back in 2000, maybe around the time that he got the Limes.
Yeah, there's one on the Orlando Letelier assassination too. Really good.
So check that out. Help if you can. Meanwhile, last night was Tuesday night, otherwise known as the Sting. People are calling it in my emails. The Sting, of course, is a reference to a famous movie from the 70s with Paul Newman and Robert Redford about the long con. And people are equating Michael's whole, like, if we get to 2,000 patrons, I will eat from a one of these survival post-apocalyptic dinner things. People didn't realize that what he said, well, I will eat as much as I want, as opposed to some type of challenge. Doing stuff that you want to, not a challenge. Doing stuff despite the fact that you don't want to do it, a challenge.
I will say,
it didn't look like he wanted to do it at all.
We did not want to do any of it, and I'll just say this too. I mean, I think Matt should maybe sort of explain the breakdown.
Don't try and implicate Matt in on this. I mean, this was a group.
Matt I take owner. Matt opened the bucket and was the first to say that doesn't smell like bad food. That smells like industrial not food. And if Matt says that with his dietary habits, that's extremely revealing. Then we were shocked that, I mean, basically, if you're in a survival scenario, I don't see how this is that handy. It's very heavy to carry around. It's impractical to pack. Presumably, you don't have a water heater around you. I guess you'd need to like build some sort of fire or
something.
something.
You think you're gonna survive a post-apocalyptic world without being able to create fire and
No, of course not. But I'm thinking more like things are burning down. You're running. You want to throw something.
It's got 196 meals in there. How far?
All of which are not
That's
that.
for your stationary bunker when you've got the generator hooked up.
If you were in your stationary bunker when you had the generator hooked up, I'm going to recommend you go for some better product. But so we didn't, and Jamie helpfully reminded us because we thought we were going to be able to eat any of it, and she promptly texted me and said, "There's a water heater here," and I
can only imagine what your reaction to that was. Like, damn it.
No, my reaction could have been to ignore it. My reaction was to publicly say on the show, hey, we actually do have a heater here. We should set
Jamie
this up.
would have been
Jamie
right on the
would have been a
saying,
total
I just
nudge,
told him
just
there's
like
a
you.
hot water heater in there.
I don't know if Jamie's a rat. I hold her in higher esteem.
It's not
than
a
you.
rat. It's a consumer advocate. Is what it is.
So,
do I care more about my solidarity with you as a fellow worker or as somebody of whom I am a patron?
Wasn't doing this
I
as a
was
worker.
doing this as a don't worry. I was doing it as a capitalist class.
So
You're
technically,
fine. You're
I'm
okay.
your boss in that scenario.
There you go.
You're a consumer. You're like somebody who would write a Yelp review, which is just slightly above a rat. So basically, that was
ratreports.org, I guess.
That
right?
was so disgusting. I was
We have
actually
some footage
shocked.
of it if we want to watch it here.
We have some footage of this. This is real. This is disturbing. This is all you're going to see, by the way, because we're not clipping this. All right. I'm taking my full bite here.
What a baby.
The beans is where the memory morning comes from.
Wow.
Brendan Sutton sat there and watching us do this said was like it was like his reparations. It was so amusing.
But all these excuses, it's like we just replayed the HUD the HUD hearing
Of
again.
course I said that I wouldn't do more than take a bite. I had been very clear the whole time.
Well,
in addition to that,
I'm announcing my survival food
go
challenge.
eat that. Go eat it, Sam. Do
which
it.
is,
Do it.
Are there leftovers?
How many meals you had? You had 2 meals?
Yeah, we tasted from 3 meals. I think.
Oh, you tasted?
Yeah, we had a little sample menu.
You tasted. It's like one of those like expos on a Sunday. Like we got like 162 restaurants from Brooklyn. We just tasted. We did a
No,
little
I
tasting.
will say, like, as someone who tuned into this, like, very excited to watch, we got what we came for. Like, we definitely, there was a sufficient amount of like retching, unless he was just faking the whole thing. Like, I was satisfied.
None of us were faking that.
I will. I will personally.
Even Uchi Wally insisted. Our friend patron who was there visiting insisted on trying it, and he went very quickly from basically like, guys, stop it. This is like whatever. Stop being babies. tasted it, and went, "Ooh, gee, I don't know if that's safe to eat."
Well, should have saw the eggs.
Man,
I will.
the eggs.
I will.
That is a scientific accomplishment.
Oh, why didn't you
there are
guys leave
people-
us any leftovers?
There are people
There
floating.
are. The bucket is still right here.
The bucket's
by the
still
way.
there. People
Never mind.
People
Yeah.
are floating the
Yeah.
idea that I would taste from 4 meals.
Go for it.
And but the challenge would be if 500 of your patrons leave to join the Majority Report.
Wow.
Then I would try.
This is just pure oligarch class warfare, you know? I
Oh,
came
it
up
is.
from nothing. I
Oh,
grew
look.
up in total poverty. You're the son of a lawyer.
Hold on one second. Hold on,
you're
wait.
a
Hold
rentier.
on.
You already leech from my broadcast on a regular basis. And the fact that you would, this is your true color. See, this is what Sam really thinks of poor people. This is what Sam really thinks of the struggle. This is what Sam really
This is
thinks.
what I think about consumer
This
advocacy.
is why Sam
and
is
truth in
secretly voting for
advertising.
Biden. Sam is not a good guy, folks. He doesn't care. This is why he was always like,
I don't think Hillary's really that bad. I don't think Hillary's really that bad. I don't think she would do that.
Tim Black's going to do like 4 episodes on this.
no, Michael Brooks, he revealed Sam Seder. Seth Meyers finally got fed up. Said the truth about oligarch Sam. That's why Sam talked about Russia every single second.
I was protecting
That
my
is why
fellow
Sam was like,
oligarchs.
If we talk about Russia, then maybe my upstate second home won't be taxed.
There you
and
go.
then I could steal money from my employee.
There you
Look at my dreidel.
Wow.
You know where that joke came from? The dreidel joke?
No.
You know where that came from, right?
Yes,
Matt?
I know.
From anti-Semitism.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
No, that was the first Ilhan Omar impression with "the world has been hypnotized." Just like
They spin their dreidels, and then everyone is deceived.
Yeah, whatever.
Brandon and I talked about capitalist
That
realism.
that anti-Semitism came from an earlier anti-Semitic joke I made.
Well, the trouble is, I mean,
It's okay. I'm referencing my own earlier
You have
anti-Semitic
people
joke.
like you working so hard to fortify anti-Semitic
You mean you,
tropes.
like the Jews?
Stovepiping anti-Semitic jokes.
Jesus.
We should have saved this for the fun half.
Yeah.
Matt, what else? We talked about the distinction between Warren and Sanders, why green imperialism is not going to do the trick. And we did a history of this idea of greening the military as like a way of triangulating the climate message going back to Thomas Friedman and the Global Business Network. Sanders' foreign policy history. We gave shout outs to the union that wouldn't load. Did we talk about that yesterday on Majority Report?
Yeah, we headlined
Top
it,
lined
the
it.
Italian.
Italian union that wouldn't load arms shipments for Saudi Arabia. Notorious B.I.G.
They weren't
47.
loading arms shipments. They were loading electrical equipment onto a shipment
that had
boat
arms.
that had arms. on it.
Right. So they refused to do that in Genoa. And Brandon and I talked about ideology. I mean, I won't explain much. Brandon's a brilliant, really interesting guy. And so I would listen to and watch us, and I'd also check out the discourse, and we should have him on a Friday sometime. And we also inaugurated a new segment called The Daily Show Gone Bad, where we did some media criticism of Hassan Minhaj's coverage of Brazil.
Yeah. It's where we criticize media figures we're envious of.
Yes, media figures that we're purely envious of, but who are also genuinely not funny. And are perpetuating horrible beliefs on Brazil. Patreon.com/TMBS, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, our producer Andy is back from his travels presenting on Posadas at Cuba's first Trotsky conference, as well as Red May in Seattle. And he's got 4 interviews, which we ran this week. Isabel Diaz-Torres from the anarchist Biblioteca Abra in Cuba, who was actually arrested after this interview for staging a protest against homophobia, which is kind of insane. Simón Rodriguez from Partido Socialismo y Libertad of Venezuela, who is part of the left opposition to both Maduro and Guaido, a producer of the audio zine podcast Resonance Audio, and Philip Walsletter of Red May, who wraps everything up with his story of backpacking to Chile in 1973 during the coup.
Matt.
Literary Hangover, the Margaret Fuller episode will be out for patrons, I believe, tomorrow evening. We are 7 patrons shy of 200. We're not going to be eating anything for that celebration. No.
Well,
no more
that's
debasing.
Good that you aren't over-promising. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half, 646-257-39.
3,000 patrons, yoga class, and wine bar.
646-257-3920.
The fun half, Sam saw a quarter wedged under the bookshelf, so he needed to go get it. I can't take any calls or IMs because I'm sitting at my my seat. I guess we should hold off on playing any sound until Sam gets back, depending on how long he's delayed. We did inaugurate that Daily Show Gone Bad clip yesterday. And Sam's here. But I was going to ask, was the Daily Show always bad? Or now we just realize it's bad? But we'll talk about that another time. Sam is back. Did you get it?
Yes.
Did you find it, Sam? Did you find it?
Find what?
You told me to vamp for you where you could get a quarter that was wedged underneath the bookshelf.
Really?
At least do it in the right with Mandela voice.
Yeah, really.
Hey, Samantha, was it too wedged for you?
Right, that's better.
The difficulty of the Jew is
Now
that
you-
on one hand, they want to go into inconvenient places to find quarters, dimes, and nickels, even pennies, but yet at the same time, because of their profound lack of athleticism.
It is a little bit weird when
just put on a Mandela face mask and do
No, that
do
part's
the
not
Gavin
weird.
McGinnis
That
show.
is that has been that has been
I think that
reality for centuries.
In all
But
kidding aside, I think I do really need to, because I need to.
When there's a slight bit of pressure, you immediately go to the anti-Semitism. I think
Right.
that's very telling.
Just a slight bit. Well, I think that it's like, well, no, it's a
You're trying to. It's because of the Jews.
I think it's like when you think about just how they act.
Jesus.
I had a borderline serious point to make, but I'm not going to try to do it.
But you're pretty borderline right now, buddy. Very, very close to the border. Super borderline.
Bless me, Father, if I have sinned.
Sid. Yeah. Oh, was that joke too much for you?
One night Russian lemonade stand. What are you implying about the motivation of Trump Treasury Secretary Mnuchin's unwillingness to go through with the Harriet Tubman on the 20? It's just about anti-counterfeiting security features for these guys. And these bills are much easier to fake if the face on them is one of those who all look the same to them. Yeah, exactly. Jonathan Armstead.
We have an interview actually kind of on that topic, don't we, Sam? The pre-tape.
Oh, that's true. Jonathan Armstead. Sam, I held off on a joke about Ben Carson yesterday, but after seeing this latest clip, I'm going to make it. Dr. Carson obviously got confused about an Oreo because he's so used to thinking of himself as an Oreo black on the outside but white on the inside. Seriously, what's this guy problem? He steps away from asking Ayanna Pressley why a common field hand was speaking to him that way. He thought he'd gain respect after working in the big house for so long. Bullprogs. We should equip those Congress members with belt buckles to protect them from Ben Carson after that humiliation. Colin from Nebraska. Hey, I'm our crew. Good news. I got married this past weekend to my beautiful wife. I am so happy. Can I get a shofar? Sure. Gregory from Oklahoma. I plan on overtaking Progressive Voice and being the leading Generation Z leftist news show.
Get him. Look,
I even plan on having worse takes on TV shows and music than him. Please support the Green Corn Rebellion show on Patreon and SoundCloud.
We're already
Competition would start kicking in.
Wow.
I'm there.
All right, let's get into the fun half in a fun manner. The Brexit vote obviously has been a little bit problematic for Great Britain. And it is a lot of the motivation of Brexit, I think, was problematic. And, we have conversations like we did yesterday where you realize, it's also problematic in terms of, the greater implications for the EU in terms of multinational organizations, even if they are problematic. The organizations in and of themselves, in the policies that they come up with because of the power dynamics within those organizations. But much of this is a process. To get to the more benevolent multinational organizations, you may have to work through some of the less benevolent ones. But here is a rather hilarious exchange. And, we've tried to make the point on this program that it's not just Trump is the problem in this country. It's all the people who support Trump. And really, even that may be too narrow because it's just, the problem is a lot of times it's just largely people, just in general. And here is, I guess, Exhibit A that I would offer to the court. Here is
Blaming the electorate. Global edition.
Global edition. This is apparently, I'm not quite clear. One of these MPs is David Davies. I'm not going to tell you anything else about him. And he wears a camera on his chest, like an iPhone contraption or something, presumably to protect himself from people who come at him with cameras. And there is a Brexit supporter who approaches him who has an accessory, which is basically a wearable microphone that broadcasts her voice as she
It looks like
films
a beer
them.
helmet.
This is like
it looks like a beer helmet, literally.
Now, understand, look,
And
this
he's
is a country.
He's pro Brexit.
Well,
sorry.
Nothing like tipping the joke.
I'm sorry.
Understand this country. There's a lot of pressure going on here because they can't quite figure out a plan to exit the EU, and they can't figure out whether they're going to do a redo on the vote. There's a lot of, I can't even follow it, frankly. And here's part of the reason why. Here is that MP and his run-in with a Brexiteer.
How does it make you feel? Well, obviously what I will do is record it. So I'm actually going to turn my camera on now to record this lady, and I will put anything abusive onto Twitter because I think it's unacceptable.
So somebody's asking, a news person's asking him, like, well, how did it feel to be attacked all the time? And he's like, well, I record with the camera on my chest, and then I immediately put it to Twitter. So
this is very 2019, like technological warfare on both sides.
This is a Twitter conversation in real life.
This is the like the 2019 version of two bald men fighting over a comb.
Because I think it's unacceptable.
Why is he feeling intimidated? Well, you've got a bloody great camera there on it, for God's sake. What's the difference with my phone?
Well, because when you're talking,
I was quiet. Usually I stopped talking when I came home. I was quiet. Right? When I came here, I was quiet. I was just going to listen to what he was saying, but now I can tell he's a Remoaner. He must be a Remoaner. Did you vote Remain? Are you an MP?
I am an MP.
Are you an MP? Did you vote to Remain?
No, I voted to leave, actually.
Well, I don't know. Why are you acting like a snowflake then? You know what a snowflake?
Like a snowflake, but
well, you are, because you got a little bit intimidated by me.
No, I'm not intimidated by you, but you might make false allegations
of what?
against me. Well, I don't know, so I'm recording.
Have you done something to be accused of?
So anyway, that's a kind of, funny enough, I think this lady's actually on the Brexit side, which is my side of the argument, but basically it's the same.
Well, you're not acting like a Brexiteer. You're being very... you see, actually, no, if you are a Brexiteer... No, honestly, if you are a Brexiteer, then this is what Brexiteers have been...
Because I campaigned for Brexit. Where were you? Where were you people when I was out campaigning for Brexit? You were nowhere. You're behind your keyboards, and now you've come out, right?
Pause it for 1 second. So, understand, this MP is waiting for Remainers to come around and harass him, but he gets harassed by a Brexiter who, when she realizes that he voted for Brexit, then she's stuck needing a reason to be antagonistic towards him. So she just basically asks, well, is there something that I should be accusing you of? Have you done something wrong? And the only thing I can tell you, she's wearing a Baked Alaska hat. No, it's isn't it, or no?
No, it says based Amy.
Oh.
And based is an alt-right term that basically, I guess it just essentially, I think.
Is that who she is?
Basically, and maybe that's her. But it means that you're red-pilled. So it's just, the global sort of
She's the new Baked Alaska.
She's a lot more
he's
entertaining.
A cuck now.
Right.
Yeah, Baked Alaska was like, hey, I was just being a show business asshole. I'm not sure I'm totally into this.
You see her also, she calls him, he's a Brexiter, but not Brexiter enough for her, like, because he voted for something to, like, delay
that was what she voted for Theresa May's delay.
I campaigned for Brexit. Where were you? Where were you people when I was out campaigning for Brexit? You were nowhere. You're behind your keyboards, and now you've come out, right? You were not a Brexiteer.
Oh, you always haven't watched my footage.
I actually was campaigning for Brexit and have been for years, so I don't need to be given lectures by people like you.
Did you vote for the deal?
I did vote for the deal.
You voted for the deal! Oh my God! And have you read the deal?
Yeah, I've read the deal.
And it means not to leave.
And how many MPs?
Right? It means we don't leave. So you were a liar. You did not vote to leave.
There we are then.
You didn't vote for it.
People like
Have you read it?
Want to join the
well, you see, I've read the withdrawal agreement. Unlike this man who's an MP, and shame, what is your name then if you're an MP?
Never mind what my name is, I'm not talking to you.
Well, I guess I'll find out when I watch the BBC, the lying BBC.
Carry on. Anyway, that's why I'm...
So he voted for the deal and this guy's pretending like he's a leaver. What a liar. You're a liar, shame on you. You're a traitor. You signed that document that is nothing, it's not even, you can't even say it's leaving.
That's what you put up with when you're out here all the time.
Oh dear, oh, have you heard?
Here now.
Oh, look, I mean, this guy, I think you picked the wrong job. If you can't cope with somebody walking along with...
I can cope with it. I can sit here all day, to be honest with you.
Well, I don't know. You seem like you're a little bit agitated.
I'm not agitated. You're the person who's...
Is that what a traitor feels like? You should feel uncomfortable. You betrayed 17.4 million people.
Done for your country? I spent 10 years in uniform for my country. I bet you've done nothing for
that's even less. You shouldn't keep telling me what you do, because so far you're not impressing me. If you serve the country, then you should know about sovereignty.
Yeah,
you should know about democracy.
I know about people with big mouths and access to a keyboard as well.
Do you hear this guy? He owes you there. Listen to him. Oh yeah, he's really... So what position did you get to in your army career?
It's not interesting to talk to you.
Well, you're the one who's opening a big mouth and accusing me of things.
I'm the one opening my big mouth. I'm the one opening my big mouth.
Tell me.
I'm the one opening my big mouth.
Tell me, what part of that?
I'm not interested in talking
Well, you're
to you.
an MP, for God's sake. You're a
Yeah.
member of
I'm
Parliament.
not your MP, am I?
Thank God.
Carry on.
Thank
Let's
God
do a bit
you're
in
not.
Welsh. Good night.
So this man,
I thought you said about the any.
Brexit, right? He claims he voted for Brexit, but he
Still us.
signed the deal. He voted for the deal that is a total betrayal of Brexit. It's a total. No, you know what? I'm fed up. Listen, no. Listen, you guys are a disgrace as well. How much have you been paid? How much has BBC been paid to promote the European Union?
Good.
I mean, this is.
And wow.
I feel
You hate
like,
to see it.
Well, no, I feel like this is. It literally is like Twitter in real life. Like it just these two people who ostensibly are both like what they're doing is about politics, and it clearly has nothing to do about politics. It's just they're just searching desperately for a reason to get into a fight with each other or to avoid. It's just so. We're
both extremely emotionally disturbed, but in different ways. Let's
Exactly.
collide.
I don't want to be pedantic, but I'm pretty sure that predates Twitter.
Well, no, it does predate Twitter, but it is. I think it is basically 3/4 of what Twitter is.
Yeah, Twitter lets you amplify.
So I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that Twitter.
Online.
Right, but and I don't think there was nearly as much of this type of stuff, frankly, pre-Twitter.
I don't know. I got
bet
kind of
she's
like
not
a Monty
motivated.
Python vibe from it.
It was very Monty
Yes,
Python.
except for it wasn't a comedy show. It was literally just two people on the street, like
including one being an MP.
No, this is the future of the.
with a body like he had that. Was
That's what I'm saying. This is the future of the info war. He's got like his
Right.
rig. He's got like a
Yep.
camera to his chest and a camera, and then she's got like some sort of voice projection technology. It's like everyone like this is how mech suits start. Except
her voice projection technology was so awesome.
But
I would've
I'm not going to
copied
be
that.
satisfied with this until they're both wearing jetpacks, and so that they can just fly up and then just sort of like
yeah. This is how Pacific Rim
I
starts.
don't even want to
Giant
fly. I don't
hand
even
comes
want to.
down from the sky and just smites them both.
I don't even want to turn my jetpack on for you.
It's like Transformers, but
like
instead of like guns,
Transformers
it's
of the
like
petty.
media technology.
he won't even turn on his jetpack. Now look at this, you liar.
What I think is would be so interesting to me is like disaggregating like the difference between people who vote for things like Brexit, and I think Brexit was more so than Trump, of people that are really just disgusted and fed up, and like the people who are disgusted and fed up are the opposite in the ecosystem. Like they don't want to talk to an MP. I think they want to be like left alone and have things change, and then like the actual like Trump Brexiteer voters. I mean, I'm guessing that woman is not, that's not the, and I think it's real. I don't mean this sarcastically, but she is not in the misdirected populist anger or economic anger. I'd be very interested to hear her thoughts on the Romanian question, the Jewish question, the Pakistani question, the Nigerian question.
I think she probably falls into the category of misdirected anger, but just not the type of.
It's definitely a huge amount of misdirected anger.
Based Amy is who she is, and she is a free speech and anti-Sharia activist.
Right, of course.
Oh, so she's angry at Sharia.
Right, free speech and anti-Sharia.
So we have another angle of this.
Speaking out.
Oh, this is hers.
He's intimidated. Well, obviously, what I would do is record it. So I'm actually going to turn my camera on now to record this lady, and I will put anything.
What did I do? I just walked up here filming. Why is he feeling intimidated? Well, you've got a bloody great camera there on him, for God's sake. What's the difference with my phone?
Well, because when you're talking...
I was quiet. You see, I stopped talking when I came... No, I was quiet.
Oh, my gosh.
We are truly living in the spectacle.
Oh my God! But you know what? This is the most compelling argument against socialism, because even after all of the Tory cuts, the UK still has things like the NHS, which allow this woman to be a pest.
She doesn't even have many subs.
All of her basic needs are taken care of.
Yeah,
so she
maybe
can go
they,
and harass people with voice projection.
Maybe they paid for that voice projection technology.
Yeah, she probably
her
got
voice
that.
is too quiet.
Yeah, that voice projection technology could be some type of like advanced speaking capacity thing that labor introduced.
Or it could
it's like
be
people
one
with
of those...
soft voices need help.
Oh, Lord.
This lady can harass people on the street about Sharia. She call him a Ramoner.
Yeah. I love the fact that it's just like, oh, you're on my side politically? Well, then why is such a snowflake?
Well, that's the part that is Twitter. Like we played that thing where Gordon Brown talked about that woman that was complaining about Polish workers in like 2008, and she didn't have any sort of vocabulary like that. This woman had like an entire set of talking points that were like, oh, so you're a Ramoner. You sound like a snowflake.
Well, that was actually fascinating. Can we take a detour on this for just 1 second? It was a fascinating conversation we had because in 2009, Gordon Brown was caught on a hot mic. He was out campaigning, and a woman who, she's an old lady, and maybe today she wouldn't, I don't know how bad she was. I feel kind of bad trashing her, but she did give him she said, why are there so many Romanians here, right? And this is 2009. So maybe today she would be really awful in Brexit, or maybe she would have pulled back from that trajectory. Who knows? But she said that. She didn't have any of this other rhetoric. That was as far as it went. And he kind of was like, all right, well, at first he actually tried. He said, well, there's 1 million Britons in the Eurozone too. So that's not exactly true that they're just flooding us. We go back and forth. And then, he wrapped it up and basically was like, I hope you vote Labor. Then he goes in his car and he's on a hot mic and he's like, who let me with that woman? And they're like, what? And she's like, oh, just this awful bigoted woman. She was just awful. We're complaining about Romanians, just a bigot. The whole thing was ridiculous. And what I wondered today, though, is on one side, that woman could have the whole Brexit lane for her if that's where she was, and she could get amplified in her bigotry. But conversely, Gordon Brown, it was a disaster at that time. But I think today there would be shows like ours that would be like, all right, Gordon Brown, nicely done. Fair enough, buddy.
Right.
It might have worked really well for him.
Right. Well, we didn't have we had memes, but they were very far and few between. They were like, where's the beef? Or what's up?
Got milk?
Got milk.
You're getting Adele.
Yeah.
Somebody
exactly.
stop me.
Right. All ads. It was all, or, not.
Not still pretty good.
Oh, God.
That's why Sacha Baron Cohen was so good.
My wife. Yeah. My wife. He did not. He was like, my wife is.
I want to go through Steve Mnuchin because he's in some hot water. This is this Rashida Tlaib and Steve Mnuchin. Is this from yesterday? This is this morning. Okay, House Financial Services hearing. This is following the reports that there's an internal IRS memo that had been drawn up long before Steve Mnuchin pretended like he could reject the congressional demand to see Donald Trump's taxes based upon his assessment that there wasn't a legitimate reason to do so. The IRS had already informed him that not only does there not have to be a legitimate reason, there doesn't have to be a reason. If they request it, we have to give it. The only way to even stop that would be the extraordinary measure of the president invoking executive privilege. It's not clear to me why that would even hold too, but at the very least, it's clear that Steve Mnuchin did not even follow the actual advisement that he got from the IRS, despite the fact that he claimed otherwise. And Tlaib is just like, you got problems, buddy.
I will be remiss as somebody that truly believes in the rule of law. As somebody that has practiced law and is an attorney, I would advise you, Secretary, to get personal legal advice. because the cover-up by this administration, it goes beyond just providing the taxes. You can consult the Department of Justice, but you personally making decisions not on the best part of the American people, but to cover up the occupant of the White House. I think you need to be very, very clear about what your role is and what your responsibility is to the American people. This goes beyond just providing taxes, right? It goes about transparency and the fact that no one is above the law. So, Secretary, please seek out legal advice personally of what your obligations are, because the Department of Justice is not protecting you, it's protecting the president.
Ooh, boy. You know, I would remind Steve Mnuchin the best time to get a defense attorney is when you don't need one. Now, I would imagine that time has long gone. Mnuchin should have probably had a defense attorney on retainer for the past 10 years.
Really procrastinating this.
I thought the campaign contributions would take care of it.
But this is the type of stuff that is going to lead to impeachment. Here is Representative Alma Adams questioning Mnuchin about this IRS memo that clearly undercuts every excuse that Mnuchin has even been trying to pretend that he can get away with.
For you to release your tax returns. Are you aware of that?
I am, but that's the president's decision, and I'm not involved in the president's decision.
All right, let me reclaim my time. I want to get through my questions. So are you familiar with Congress's oversight authority?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So it's found in the Constitution and public laws and the House and Senate rules, and it does say that when the request is made by the appropriate offices that he should release them. Are you aware of that?
I've read the law. I've also been advised of the interpretation of the law, and I understand the constitutional issues.
All right. So why haven't you complied with Chairman Neal's request?
Because I think that would be unlawful, as advised by the Department of Justice, and that's why there's a third branch of government that most likely will
we're aware of that. Let me reclaim my time, sir. So are you aware then that by denying this that you are in direct violation of the law?
No, absolutely not. I have been advised I am not violating the law. I never would have done anything that violated the law, and quite the contrary. I've been advised that had I turned them over, I would be violating the law.
All right, let me move on, sir. So are you alleging that Chairman Neal lacks a legislative purpose, and that is the basis for your refusing his request?
Well, given that this is now most likely going to litigation, I think my letters have been quite clear in why we have denied the request, and that's
all right. Okay, sir. Let me move on. Thank you very much. So, are you intending to comply with the request at all?
No, I've made clear. We've sent him a letter that it would be unlawful for us.
All right. Okay, sir. I'm reclaiming my time. Now, have you told the IRS not to respond to Chairman Neal's request?
The IRS independently, the chairman independently wrote a letter concurring with my position.
Yeah, can you give me a yes or no? Have you?
You repeat the question?
Have you told the IRS not to respond to the request?
Again, I just said the IRS independently wrote a letter concurring.
Sir, okay, let me reclaim my time. Can you give me a yes or no?
I don't understand.
All right, okay, you will not, you won't.
Now, he understands the question. The question isn't whether the IRS wrote a letter. The question is, did you tell the IRS not to do it? Because now it seems very suspicious that the 10-page memo outlining all the reasons why the IRS must comply with this request from Congress was ignored. Like, on what basis would the IRS chief make an independent determination that he shouldn't give the taxes to Congress when their own internal review says they've got to? So Steve Mnuchin will not answer that question as to whether he was the one who directed the IRS to not give it. And he's asked the question 2 times there, and he keeps saying, they wrote a letter. Well, that's not the answer to, did you tell them to withhold the taxes?
Was it against your instructions?
there's no follow-up. He won't answer the first one. That they wrote a letter independently could have easily happened after he said, don't release the taxes. And then the IRS chief was like, I've been told by my boss at Treasury, don't release the taxes, and I'm getting a request, so I'm going to write a letter. That's how you write a letter independently after you've been told not to do something.
Where does this lead to?
I'll tell you where it leads to. Here's Nancy Pelosi, who so far has probably been the most outspoken bulwark against impeachment in the Democratic caucus. Most outspoken. I mean, maybe she's doing it on behalf of members of hers that are in purple districts. Maybe this is the price that she, is paying to get them to vote with her on other things. I don't know. But what I think we're starting to witness now is her plan B. I think she did not want to go to impeachment, but I think this is where pressure starts to have implications. And not just pressure. I mean, look, the pressure is founded on events that have taken place in the past 2 or 3 weeks. Barr refusing to testify, Mnuchin lying, withholding of documents, not even going with the EPA. EPA ignored Congress to talk about their plans to basically allow for more mercury in the air. So here she is. She's talking about, well, listen to this.
It was a very positive meeting, a respectful sharing of ideas, and I think a very impressive presentation by our chairs. We do believe that it's important to follow the facts. We believe that no one is above the law, including the President of the United States, and we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up, and that was the nature of the meeting.
So they've shared ideas, and they believe that the President of the United States is involved in a cover-up. What we're watching is, I think, and I don't think this was Nancy Pelosi's plan. I think Nancy Pelosi's plan was no impeachment. Let's just try and focus on doing business so that we cannot be criticized as a do-nothing Congress. I mean, a dumb idea, but that was her plan. But now I think that the actions of the Trump administration, and I think the Trump administration is probably baiting the Democrats into calling for impeachment. But again, they're between a rock and a hard place, because it's not just you don't just do things. You don't just not impeach because you think Trump wants you to impeach. You also have to calculate in what are the costs of us not doing this. And maybe Donald Trump is not such a great strategist. Maybe he's just a better tactician. Maybe he's just a good blowhard. Maybe he can just motivate racialized politics. I mean, there's a whole host of other things that you have to take into consideration. So I think what's happening with Pelosi right now, this is my sense, and I don't think this is a fait accompli. I think there needs to be more, but I think it feels like it's inevitable that it's going this way. I think we're watching Pelosi change her mind and do so in a way. I believe that she's coming to the conclusion that, like, okay, the pro-impeachment force is too strong. So instead of me just reversing myself, I am going to publicly show how I'm being convinced. And this is why the American public should be convinced. I think this is a plan B for her, but this is what you would do to execute it.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I think happened is that they polled people and found out that Democrats don't believe that impeachment is going to do anything. And they kind of mistook that for they don't want impeachment, when in fact, like, I absolutely want impeachment, but I don't believe the Democrats are going to do it. Like, that's why I groaned when Rashida Tlaib was like, let's impeach the motherfucker. Not because I don't want it to happen, but because I don't think they're going to do it. And now, like, they are finally responding to what their base actually wants.
Well, I mean, I think her calculation could also be, I need to protect those Congress folks who won from purple districts, who are going to be up for re-election in 2 years in districts that, aren't safe districts. And I protect those members because that's what protects our majority. And in return from them, they know I'm protecting them, so I get certain votes. They have to make some hard votes on X, Y, Z. I protect them on impeachment. But it's unclear whether impeachment will, like you say, actually endanger these people. And the more that she has and shows political pressure on her, the easier it is for her to keep those people in line, even if she ultimately comes down in favor of impeachment. I mean, this stuff is, look, and here's the thing. People, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but you read this, too many people who, on the left, I'm sure there's similar problems on the right, but there's just too many people who perceive this as an ideological thing, as opposed to just straight strategy or tactical questions. And her and Pelosi's perspective on this is obviously different than ours. She has a better sense of, on some level, of like what's going on within her caucus than we do. But at the same time, she's also in a bubble. And she also, is naturally, those in power are naturally very often more conservative, not ideologically, but in terms of the way they use their power.
I had a friend who was on a plane next to a staffer. I can't remember what the senator was, a Democratic senator from the Northeast. And the staffer was currently getting their mind blown by Jane Mayer's dark money. So that's where they were at.
Right. I mean, there was a piece that I saw that, here's a piece actually, by a guy named, I don't know his writing, Jonathan M. Katz. And it talks about the pros and contras of relying on political reporters. It was really basically a long think piece on that interview that we talked about yesterday with Bernie and the writer from the New York Times, who incidentally, somebody sent an email, and apparently she married into a family of like Bain Capital or something like that. But
I think she used to work at BlackRock herself, right?
I don't know if that's the case, but regardless, the issue is less that, it seems to me, and more the problem with political reporters is they have no... It's not necessarily, I mean, we presume it, right? We presume that reporters are going to have a deep understanding of history. We presume that because we want to be able to trust that what reporters are doing is putting the events that they report on in some type of broader context. So we assume that. And certainly, I mean, when I started just doing this, which is not even, I just was exposed to reporters more. I was often shocked in the course of interviewing people. When I came in as a comedian and I was like, I need to do a lot of work. And I was shocked at sometimes the lack of depth of people's understanding of reporting, ostensibly reporting on a topic. And so the problem with interviewing... The problem with interviewing Bernie Sanders about his stance on the Contras in the context of a political race is that political reporter may know nothing about what she's talking about. And so you end up getting simple questions like that are in some ways completely divorced of the context in which they're talking. So if the question is, you were at a rally where you heard anti-American chants, did you leave? You could ask that question about someone if they were in Philadelphia in 1995, if they were in Russia in 1982, in Iran in 1987, in San Francisco in 2003, at a Dixie Chicks concert in Germany in 2002. You could ask that question about any time in any political context. It is essentially a meaningless question if you're asking about a specific act. And it works as a reporter, but it doesn't necessarily work in terms of giving us more truth. And so I'm not sure why I brought that up even, but there is I don't know what inspired that, but here's Cy Hirsch talking on C-SPAN about this, and this is back in 1983.
Why I shouldn't be. I've been generally treated very favorably by the press. I really have been. I have no complaint. Given Kissinger's status, but they really don't. I was press secretary for G. McCarthy when he ran against Lyndon Johnson. One of McCarthy's lines that always struck me as very apt, funny, but also more apt than people realize. He said, "The trouble with you reporters is you write but you don't read," and we do have that. I mean, there's not enough, it seems to me, thoughtful stuff that goes on in the media, which makes it possible for a guy like me to make money.
Now, I got news for you. He's complaining in 1983. Oof.
You look at what happened to like journalist jobs compared to, say, PR jobs over that span of time.
Right. I mean, this is the thing, that people have to understand that like that reporter from the New York Times isn't, I think, in her mind, doing a hit job on Bernie. I think she just doesn't have the skill set to actually really do a thoughtful interview about that topic. Now, maybe the editor is aware, like, she's a good person to pick for this because I'm not going to get the one over there with the Che shirt who, is like, singing Billy Bragg songs about Salvador Allende. Because they're just going to go in there and they're not going to try and get Bernie. So I'm just going to put somebody in there who really doesn't have the skill set that's involved in asking this specific angle.
Or she does know as a member of the ruling class and she's defending her people.
Yeah, I would probably go with ignorance. I mean, I think ignorance is, I have a feeling that you could sit her down and ask her about the Contras and about the Daniel Ortega and the Sandinistas and about Batista and about the earthquake in Managua and
can I just say, for what it's worth,
and she would just be like,
I do think there's a synthesis here, which is that I agree with you. She's clearly totally ignorant, and the ability to have that ignorance and that sort of like matter of fact, essentially jingoism, is a product of her class position.
That may be too, and she may have a natural sort of like,
she knows she's
lack
on the right
of
side.
Affinity, yes.
Yeah, she has
Bernie.
exactly.
Yeah.
She has no thought process about the other, and she doesn't need to.
Yeah, this kind of status quo attitude is not ever portrayed as being political.
Right, and I could imagine, it's not hard for me to imagine someone who, I'm just basing her class off of what I read in the wedding announcement, that there are people, women, men similarly situated, coming from similar families who would actually have an awareness of that stuff, and not
everybody can be all of Palmy.
I go back to this Ben Rhodes quote from this profile of him in the New York Magazine from years ago, but it says, most of the outlets are reporting on world events from Washington. The average reporter we talk to is 27 years old, and their only reporting experience consists of being around political campaigns. That's a sea change. They literally know nothing.
Yes, literally.
Yeah, and the profession has become so proletarianized that it's mostly just like downwardly mobile rich kids who really don't know anything and don't realize yet that, you take a job for $30,000 a year and you don't form a union and it's going to stay that way.
That's also true.
You can afford the unpaid internships.
Yes, exactly. You can do all the unpaid internships. You know everybody from school. It's gross.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 610 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Sam. It's Michael from Pennsylvania. How are
Michael
you?
from Pennsylvania. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Yesterday was Election Day here in Pennsylvania, our primary for this odd year. And I was involved in a couple campaigns.
Ooh.
And one of them was here in my home city of Allentown, third largest city. And we won everything.
Wow.
And one of the people we elected, one was a woman of color, 28 years old. She won by 1,000 votes over the second place person for city council.
Damn.
And we also elected the youngest ever candidate for city council in Allentown history, my friend Josh Siegel. He is a member of DSA, and we ousted Democratic incumbent who the machine was behind. So it was really exciting.
Wow, that's great. Congratulations, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Well, let me ask you
Yes.
this. Does that, does those numbers, how does that bode, would you say, for 2020? There's this narrative out there that people have been demobilized, and I wonder if the people have been just demobilized in terms of I'm not going out and protesting anything that has to do with national politics or, because there's nothing legislatively happening anyways, although we did have people out, protesting against these abortion bans. But what is your sense about that demobilization? If it does it, is the demobilization there, or is it just simply the mobilization continues to be organizing on the ground and is less sort of seen by reporters?
So I would say that my impression was that kind of the average everyday normal person is kind of feeling demobilized. But what we did is it was all grassroots retail organizers. We had a group, there's a group called Make the Road. It's on the left, immigrants' right organization. And basically we were focused, for Josh as a very young candidate, we had to build a coalition of young people, people of color, immigrants, and we also folded in organized labor. And so we had to do it the hard way of dragging people out. Because, I do think there is a bit of everyone's waiting for something to happen. Everyone was fired up last year for the Democrats to go after Trump and kind of put him on trial for the American people. And it's not happening. Because, frankly, when I look at Nancy Pelosi and a lot of the people in the establishment, Nancy Pelosi is not a response to 2018. She was somebody that's been there for a very long time. She's risk averse. She's the Speaker of the House. Why should she take any risks, and imperil her position?
Right.
That's not what she's about. She doesn't feel the same pressures that you and I feel. And so, she thinks we're children for risking her speakership, right, by doing something as dramatic as openly opposing Donald Trump. They kind of feel like he's unpopular and they're just going to win. I think they're pulling the 2004 playbook out, trying to find somebody who is inoffensive against the, quote, hated Republican.
Right.
And I think that strategy is absolutely insane. That's exactly how you lose.
Agreed.
Something happened last week, on Sunday, here in the Lehigh Valley, this is my area, so I always try to contextualize my views through where I'm from. So it's not just some disembodied punditry. We are the former home of Bethlehem Steel, which used to be one of the largest steel manufacturers in the world. And on Sunday, Martin Tower, which was the global headquarters of Bethlehem Steels and the largest structure in the Lehigh Valley, was imploded. And so it was something that used to employ 300,000 American steelworkers. So here in Pennsylvania, when Bernie did the town hall, it was in Bethlehem on Fox News. And I know there was a big debate about whether he should go on Fox News. Well, a report just came out this week that people who watch Fox News are more likely to vote for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary than people that watch MSNBC. And that's a surprising number of Democrats do watch Fox News. I think it's something like 20% of Democrats, which is wild, but it is what it is. So we have these people out here who Donald Trump talks to. And when you look at 2018, there were a lot of places that did go for the Democrats, but there were a lot more traditionally Democratic that didn't.
Right.
And if I see a risk of Donald Trump winning, it's exactly the same place he carried the last time, which is very like Pennsylvania's 85% white. Like you can't rely just on the Democratic-based demographics to win. And it's absolutely vital that we build that coalition of young people, immigrants, people of color, and organized labor. And we need to, that's something that we did last night in Allentown, but it's not the strategy that it seems to be that the Democratic Party wants to do. And, Josh does have a general election, and CC Gerlach, who's the other person. We didn't manage to get all the incumbents thrown off, but we got 2 of the 3 seats. So that was a pretty amazing achievement. Something that doesn't happen in local politics, I'm sure you know that, Sam, is that, defeating these local machines is like so
super hard.
Because we have dismantled it.
Oh, that's awesome. Mike, congratulations.
Wait,
I got to jump.
Sam, I have a quick question. Mike, does your shoulder hurt?
Why would my shoulder hurt?
From patting yourself on the back because you're an egotistical, absolute monster on the phone.
It wasn't me. It was.
All right.
It was a lot of these.
In 1 week, I have to hear you brag and Sam not admit that I've been calling impeachment for over a year.
Mike,
and now he jumps on the bandwagon pretending we've had the same position all along. But, that's okay. Anyways, I'd like to get to the new Emerson polling on South Carolina's Northern District.
Gotta let you go, Mike. We'll...
If I could plug one
quick,
thing, and then
quick.
I promise to leave. So like some of the Majority Report super fans and contributors like myself,
They're
Jeff
all
from
super
Georgia,
fans, yeah.
Kentucky Fried Comrade, we're going to be sitting down and talking to Nancy Pelosi's primary challenger in a couple weeks about his plans in San Francisco. If you're interested in that, you can check out, I think we're going to put it up on SoundCloud or whatever, under the name In Too Deep. I recommend everyone check that out. It's going to be interesting.
When it's up,
great new
call
podcast.
When it's up, call in and we'll promote it.
They did one on the rise of white supremacy
Thanks,
politics in California. That was good too. There's a huge amount of talent out there.
All right, I just got one minute. Folks, we're not going to have time for another phone call. I'm so sorry. All right, we'll take it. We've got to be 2 minutes on this. Calling from a 612 area code. Got to be quick.
Hello, Sam?
Yes.
Hello, Sam?
Yes, who's this?
Hello?
Hello?
This is Brenda.
Brenda!
From Minneapolis.
Brenda from Minneapolis. How are you, Brenda?
Yes. I'm just a second here. That's my milkshake.
Oh, there you Well, I'm sorry you don't have anything left.
Did you know that if you take an Oreo and crumble it up, put it in your milkshake, it's really good.
Oh,
it's
well,
really
there you go. You're crossing the streams. All right, Brenda, we got literally 60 seconds.
Okay. Very quickly, there's been an issue within the skeptical, rational, atheistic crowds that I travel in. A YouTuber by the name of Rationality Rules, posted an extremely transphobic video, and in which he fearmongered about trans women competing against cisgendered women in the Olympics and in sports in general, and it was very uninformed, and it resulted in a huge blow-up between him and the ACA, which is the Atheist community of Austin, Texas, which does the Matt Dillahunty Atheist Experience as well as some other shows. And this resulted in a huge blow-up. And as you can no doubt guess, a man who calls himself Rationality Rules on YouTube knows nothing about what he's talking about, did no research, none at all. The science does not support a single thing that he asserted. And there is a YouTuber, I believe her pronoun is she, or he, I don't know, called Essence of Thought, who has posted a couple excellent takedowns, very respectful, very thoroughly researched about exactly why. And I think this will be something that will be coming up with the Olympics coming up. This will be a major sort of like moral panic on the right about trans women competing with other women.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Brenda. I'm going to check out Essence of Thought. Maybe we'll do a video on it as well to promote that.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, folks. That's it for calls today, and I'm just going to do a couple of IMs and then get out of here. Do we have Trump responding to Pelosi? How long is that? Okay, so let's play this. Nancy Pelosi, like I said earlier, basically said that Trump has been engaging in cover-ups. This is a function of, at the very least, what's going on with Mnuchin and Barr withholding parts of the redacted parts of the Mueller investigation, keeping Mueller from testifying in front of Congress, et cetera, et cetera. And so here is Donald Trump responding to the idea that he is involved in any type of cover-up. He's got nothing to hide, folks, nothing whatsoever.
Saw that Nancy Pelosi, just before our meeting, made a statement that we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up. Well, it turns out I'm the most, and I think most of you would agree to this, I'm the most transparent president probably in the history of this country. We have given, on a witch hunt, on a hoax, the whole thing with Russia was a hoax as it relates to the Trump administration and myself. It was a total horrible thing that happened to our country. It hurt us in so many ways. Despite that, we're setting records with the economy, with jobs. We have the most people employed today that we've ever had in the history of our country. We have the best unemployment numbers that we've had in the history of our country. In some cases, 51 years, but generally in the history of our country. Companies are moving back in. Things are going well. And I said, let's have the meeting on infrastructure. We'll get that done easily. That's one of the easy ones. And
like
instead
healthcare.
of walking in happily into a meeting, I walk in to look at people that had just said that I was doing a cover-up. I don't do cover-ups. You people know that probably better than anybody.
Oh, my God.
He is transparent in a certain way.
Yes.
Open about his
In a
crimes.
certain
Right, exactly.
Never cover up.
Get the 30,000 emails and don't forget to stay at Trump Towers tonight. Trump Hotel.
Do everything in the open. They can't get you on it.
There's this thing called a monument. Do it.
All right. 5 IMs. MIDI doctors. Please tell everyone to hit the like button. Can you ask everyone on YouTube to hit the like button? It's a YouTube solidarity thing. Okay? Hit the like button. Contagious Chameleon. The lottery debate section is why it's important to have Tulsi Gabbard and Mike Gravel in the debates. They are there to attack the establishment when questions fall short.
I didn't realize, you know what, now that I know that it's a lottery system, I am so much more, my position is flipped. Definitely they should be in the debates, yes.
Totally flipped.
Totally flipped, totally different position. Although it's always the position I have.
Ben Shapiro's doctor's wife. Can you guys talk a little bit about why anyone think communism is an ideal way of running society? I meant in a hypothetical way, as I think Jamie's the only one who identifies as a communist. P.S. Food Bucket Challenge really bummed me out last night. That was going to have to wait till tomorrow.
Listen to the Antifada if you want to hear us yell about communism.
Indeed.
It's a very
folks.
capitalist answer to communism.
Brother from Brooklyn. Dem candidates need to pounce on Biden. I'm not buying that he just fades. Scary that his unfave is better among Americans than any other Dem. We'll
Agreed.
see. Left-hand leftist, is it possible Nancy Pelosi won't impeach because Wall Street donors are telling it would affect the stock market, or is it fear of some electoral backlash? The latter. JB, REO, I can't fight this feeling anymore. Yes, Carson, Trump, and the GOP are sociopaths. Sadistic cruelty is the point. That's why the base loves them. And the final I am of the day. Jay Tingle, great new character. Gratuitously anti-Semitic Michael Brooks. Killing it. That voice would be great. Would be great doing a riff track during a screening of The Sorrow and the Pity. Oh. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive